Okay. Okay. Welcome, everybody. You are listening to the Startup Secrets for Entrepreneurs. I'm your host, Shelby Oleschlager, and our mission here is to help entrepreneurs make a difference and navigate the messy world of startup or relaunch. Join me today where we dig deep with our guests to get you the best concepts and strategies to fast track your business. Today, our special guest is Barry Moniak, who is a fear expert. So with this title, I already have tons of questions. So Barry, thank you so much for joining me today. And to get started, just give us a bit of introduction to what you do.
Well, it goes way back to me having an experience in my very early 20s where my buddies had invited me to go skiing. I didn't grow up in a family where skiing was within the family budget. So we would do tubing and sledding and things like that, but I never actually got to go skiing. So I jumped at the opportunity. They got me some clothes, rented me some gear, and we go up to the top of the mountain, and I'm just happy as can be. And they say, okay, Barry, just follow us. And they take off down to Black Diamond. And for those who aren't familiar with skiing, there's green slopes, blue slopes, black slopes usually have the greatest pitch, the most obstacles. And I wasn't thinking about any of that. I just wanted to follow my buddies. But when I looked downhill, my brain and my body froze in place. I had never experienced anything like that. Somewhere around an hour later, ski patrol had to put me in a rescue sled and drag me off the mountain. I was embarrassed, humiliated. I had no idea what my problem was because I could do any of the other things my buddies could do, surfing, sailing, scuba, hiking, biking, rock climbing, whatever. Maybe I wasn't the best, but I was in there with them. This one, totally different. And yet I noticed there were people having a really good time, like really, really good time. What's up with me? So, well, you never took a lesson. So I went and took a lesson, and now I could get down a little bunny slope without freaking out. But as soon as the pitch got too much, there came that fear again. And I'm like, okay, this is not going away. So I started going around asking people, do you ski? And if so, how would you rate it in terms of life experience? Well, almost every single person would say, sex, food, skiing, sex, skiing, food. And I'm like, okay, I am seriously missing something. What is going on? And I kept going back. It just became a personal challenge to find out what is it going to take for me to deal with this. Well, occasionally I would see someone standing frozen in place on the side of a mountain. And I'm like, oh, I think I know what's going on with them. So I would slide over and go, hey, you don't know me from Adam, but I think I know what's going on. So I'm just going to talk to you like a babbling idiot for a minute here. And once you're calmed down, I promise I will get you off this mountain in one piece. We're going to do this. Well, I became a ski instructor before I knew the first thing about skiing. All I was doing is just trying to help get people off the mountain. But what would happen is they would say, well, Barry, would you do that with me again? Do what? Well, I felt more confident when I was with you than when I was by myself. And that was the birth of ski instruction. I've now been a certified ski instructor for 24 years, helping people have a better quality experience on the mountain. And when I have a bunch of new students and we're about ready to start sliding down a slope, and I can just see it, I can feel it, the tension in their bodies. It's like, okay, everybody, take your pole and point in the direction of what's scaring you. And of course, everybody points downhill. And it's like, yep, me too. That's what we call in skiing the fall line. That is gravity pulling on us. So if that's what we're afraid of, tell you what, I'll take you out to the parking lot. There's 2-3 feet of fresh snow. It's perfectly flat. Nothing's going to push or pull. And there's nothing to be afraid of. And the dumbfounded faces are, well, then how are we going to move? Exactly. Then something either needs to push us or pull us, or we're not going anywhere. So if we want to do this thing skiing, we're going to have a different relationship with gravity. And then we can have some fun with this. And so that became my introduction to teaching skiing in a more effective way. And then I also brought that into business, going, well, I wonder what other fears there are that we're not identifying, because as a culture, we just don't talk about it. It's not cool. Mm-hmm. As soon as you acknowledge to me that you're afraid of something, for some reason, I see you as less than in some capacity. And it's like, well, if we all have it, then why aren't we more comfortable talking about it?
Mm-hmm. Wow. What a story. That I find that so interesting of how you started, and it just, you, like you said, you're a ski instructor before you even knew how to ski, just because of it all starts with ourselves and our mind. And like you said, we all have these fears that will slow us down or stop us in our tracks. And if we're able to overcome that, then we can overcome anything. And for your case, obviously it was skiing at first. So I find that really interesting. In your own experience of learning these rules and these things that are based around fear, what have you learned the most out of fear, and how it affects us and how we can overcome it in the best way possible?
That's a great question, Shelby. The pop psychology community, psychology in general, has relegated fear as a psycho-emotional thing. It's behavioral. So we use terms like, overcoming fear, denying fear, getting beyond fear. Okay. Don't buy into the fear, like as if it's some kind of a psychological behavioral thing. Nothing could be further from the truth. Fear is to the human experience what gravity is to the planetary experience. It is a force of human nature. It just exists. It doesn't wish anybody harm. It has no intent to do anything to anybody. It's part of our innate self-protection mechanism. And so understanding that, well, if that's something we're all dealing with, why didn't we learn about this in school? Why isn't this something that we can talk about? What is it? Why is it? How does it work? How could we have a different relationship with it? Mm-hmm. We've done that with gravity. Whether we like gravity or not, we can't argue about it. We certainly can't, get over it. Defy it or deny it. It's like, no, it is what it is, and it's bigger than us. So we have to work within gravity's parameters. Mm-hmm. And when we do, there's all kinds of things that are possible.
Mm-hmm. And you found that, I'm sure, with your own work and helping these businesses. So what exactly is your process when, like, if you get a client in business that they're struggling, what are the things that you want to do to help them to befriend fear, not overcome it, but just understand it in a more effective way that they can move forward with their lives?
What I came up with, Shelby, is like a 3-step process, or a 3-pronged approach. The very first thing is we have to face the fear. And in facing it, what we're looking to ascertain, is it real or is it imagined? Mm-hmm. Because the brain's physiology is going to respond the same way, regardless of whether it's an imminent fear or I'm projecting it. So we need to determine which one is it. If the fear is real, that lion wants to eat me for lunch. Okay. One more step off this cliff and I'm going down thousands of feet and I do not know how to fly. If it's that kind of a fear, we really should be wrapping our arms around it and saying, thank you for protecting me. If I stepped off into the street and I'm on my phone in some kind of a heated discussion or something, and you saw, a bus or a truck coming and it was going to be the end of me, and you grabbed me and yanked me out of the street, that's a little bit of a harsh, brutal gesture. But as soon as I realized you just saved my butt, what's my next response? Thank you so much. Right? If it wasn't for you, something really bad would have happened. So if fear is real, just say thank you. Mm-hmm. It's doing its job. It really is our friend. If fear is projected, Now we can get into some good stuff here, because what fear is trying to tell us is I either lack the mindset or the skill set to accomplish the thing that I'm trying to do. Well, great. Thank you for the information. Let me go read some books. Let me take a class. Let me get better, informed. And maybe I need to learn some new skill sets. What might I need to do? Well, when I've worked with people on the ski slopes, it's so apparent that there's a certain run, whether it was the pitch or the obstacles or whatever, that was just freaking you out. And all of a sudden we've been working, and you come down that run with a smile on your face, and I go, Shelby, turn around and take a look at what you just came down. Yeah. Well, wait a minute. Isn't that what was scaring me to death earlier? Yeah. Well, what happened? You've got a different mindset of how this whole thing works, and you've got a different skill set, because now you know where the steering wheel and the brakes are. Oh, those are the things in business that we can, avail ourselves to. What information, what skill sets do I need? Once I've done that, now we can move into that second phase of embracing the fear. Well, okay, what do I do to get more information or experience? How do I use the information or experience? And then that just gradually transcends into that third phase of befriending fear, that rather than it debilitating me, it empowers me, because it's either protecting me or it's helping me know what I need to move forward.
Wow. Yeah. And I think getting that clear understanding just makes it so much more accessible and easy to digest and handle when it's put out and laid out like that. So when you're dealing with these entrepreneurs, are there common things that you see them that are stopping them, or even within your own work that have stopped you from progressing within this business?
Yeah. I remember, back when I was an early teen, they would have the school dance in the gym, and all the girls were on one side and all the boys were on the one, and you had to walk all the way across the floor to ask the girl to dance. It was like the worst. If they said yes, I'm a hero, right? If they say no, then I've got that humiliating walk of shame back across the floor that I was rebuked, right? I think that has carried through where, well, I'm not sure if I talk to my boss that's going to go well. I'm not sure if I ask the client for the sale. I'm not sure. Okay. So we project all these fears, and again, the brain and the body react to them like as if it's real. You can't tell me that there isn't something worth being afraid of. I can feel it. Yes, and you created all of that. So
yeah, we can also
helping people take a step. How would you know? How would I know whether you want to dance with me or not if I never asked you? And are you rejecting me, or you just don't want to dance? It's like, can we just be more practical about these things? If I'm a leader, do I understand my people? Well, if I understood them better, I'd probably have an easier time communicating with them. Do I understand that every one of my people is different? They have a different persona, and I need to understand those personality differences. That's not something to be afraid of. That's just work to do. And if we enjoy our work, it's going to be fun. Skiing is challenging, but once you understand the dynamics, it can be a lot of fun. Yeah,
I agree fully. And I think just what you said, as far as if you're able to look at it in a more rational sense, and also know that it's kind of necessary for that next step. If you want to dance with someone, you can't just sit there waiting. You have to put yourself out there and face it a little bit to actually get to that next step. And I'm sure once business owners realize that, they're able to be like, okay, it's just necessary. It's like a necessary thing that they have to face and walk into and pursue if they really are serious about getting there. So that being said, and the people you help, who is around your ideal client that you like to work with?
What I found, and these are generalizations, but it's what we have to go with. Female-owned businesses, female leaders, because they have more of a proclivity for intuitive, ways of looking at things and dealing with things. They're more open to look at things differently. Mm-hmm. Technology companies, because innovation is part of their mandate, because it's always moving forward. So to introduce a new idea, whereas people who have been doing the same thing for decades, their heels are dug in a little bit more. I want to change. I want to be up to speed. Yeah, please help me be current. But when it comes to doing the work, they're still afraid because they don't know what that new territory is.
Right. And that's where you come in, right? To just kind of help guide them down that path. And like you said, I'm sure when they're done, it's like you said earlier, of the person going down the hill, they turn around and look back at what they actually just did. And just that empowerment as well. I feel like that just starts to build momentum and keep growing and everything. So for your consulting business, is this a lot of like online stuff? Do you do in-person events, or how is that structured for you to be able to help?
Another great question. Up until 2 years ago.
Yeah, right.
It was 100% in person. Wow. I mean, I taught martial arts for years. I've taught skiing. If I can't do that with you in person, I can give you a lot of information. I could probably give you enough information. You could write books about it, but you will not be able to defend yourself or ski down a mountain if I'm not there with you, helping you navigate that terrain. Mm-hmm. So that was my mandate, in person or I can't help you. And then comes COVID. So I'm meeting on a regular basis with fellow consultants and executive coaches and trainers and speakers. And they're going, Barry, that's a great, piece of ground to stand on. How are you going to pay your bills? Because we can't do anything in person with anybody. So what's your plan B? And I'm like, I guess we're going to do this virtual thing, but how am I supposed to connect with people virtually when I've spent my entire life doing it in person? And I started getting more comfortable and going, okay, well, when I can see you and I can see your facial expressions, it's a whole lot more like being with you in person. Maybe not 100% the same, but better than just on a phone. Mm-hmm. And I'm okay. And then finally the light bulb started coming on that if I'm going to go see a client somewhere else in the country, the time factor of me having to pack up and fly, the expenses of getting me there and putting me up, getting all of their people, out of the day-to-day and into some room at a hotel or a conference center. Okay. The time, the labor, the expense was significant to just get started. With virtual, what did it take us? Less than a minute. And we're connected and we're able to carry on. Neither one of us had to fly anywhere, go anywhere, do anything. I'm like, wait a minute. I don't know that I'm going to be 100% virtual, but this hybrid model is starting to make more sense. There's so much that we can accomplish virtually. And then once we've established a common language and there's an understanding of who we are and what we're dealing with, now fly me in and we can get some good work done. Mm-hmm. And I went, okay, I'm not saying that I think COVID was a good thing, but it did force us in some ways to innovate and go, okay, how do we keep moving forward? Because this isn't going away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just having that ability to kind of pivot and change, unfortunately, forcefully change a lot of business models. Yeah. Was there any sort of other, any other type of challenges that were unexpected that came up that you had to deal with?
Oh, a bunch of them. And so something that I rarely talked about that I talk about all the time now is kind of like mind mapping out what are the environmental influences that I can have little to no effect on, and what are the ones within my purview that I can do something about. If you gave me $1 billion and said, make me an inch taller or an inch shorter, I can't do it. $1 billion and I can't do it.
Mhm.
However, if you said, well, what about a pound heavier or a pound lighter, an inch wider or an inch narrower? Oh, those are things I may be able to be a better influence on. So looking at a person, looking at a team, an organization, what are those environmental influences that we can put on the map and go, okay, they are there, manufacturing, shipping, pricing. You and I can't do anything about any of those things. But given that, what can we do on the side where we can be effective? How do we present that to people? How do we let them know what we're up against so that there's an understanding, a little bit more transparency?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's within you and your clients that you're working with?
Yes. Yeah. I'm a big proponent of mind mapping because it helps people identify what's going on. We're in this linear framework because of thousands of years ago when they did it on tablets. It was line by line. Now we've got ruled paper, typewriters, everything's linear. The brain doesn't process linear information near as well as it does abstract information. So to map things out, and the best analogy that I've come up with is a bicycle wheel. If you've ever seen how they true a bicycle wheel in a bike shop, they take the wheel off the bike and they put it on this mechanism where it can spin, and there's a needle. And as the wheel goes around, it's going in and out and it's moving all over the place. Well, then they take their little tool and every spoke on that wheel either gets tightened or loosened so that eventually the wheel tracks true. And I'm like, what an amazing analogy for business. I have a business, or I'm a leader, or I'm a head of a department. Okay. What are all of my spokes, and which ones are wound too tight, which are usually the ones I'm more adept at. So I'm going to hover and focus on those more so. And the ones that I'm not so good at, I'm going to skip over. Those are the ones that need tightening. So do I need to understand finance more, or legalities more, or insurance more, or, procedural? What are the things? And usually the ones that are weaker, there's an element of fear because I don't know, or I don't know how to do, or I'm not as confident at. Well, I watch you do it and you're really good at it. If I do it, I'm going to make a fool out of myself. So I'm just going to ignore it and go somewhere else. Well, no, that's not being effective as a leader, a manager, a salesperson, customer service. We need to be able to address what is it that's holding me back.
Yeah.
But we've got to get over, and this is a huge thing for an organization, is are you going to, as a company, as an entity, be willing to recreate your culture that addressing fear is something that we can do easily, willingly, without fear of something bad coming back at us, that information being used against us?
A lot of what ifs. I always feel it's like the what if world is always scary. And if we can probably just understand our what ifs and make it more digestible and know that it isn't as bad. And I think it's interesting just what you said, having someone potentially call out your blind spots, because we don't want to do the things we're not good at. So if we have someone there to be like, by the way, this spoke is too loose and I know you're ignoring it because you don't want to look at it. And I think sometimes it is like a blind spot that we have within just ourselves to uncover, those weaknesses that we're completely ignoring.
Exactly. I can give you a ski analogy that comes up all the time. When you put a human being on an unlevel, slippery surface, okay, our eyes are going to go right down to our feet and our skis.
Okay.
Because that's where it's happening, right? By doing that, we freak ourselves out. It would be like driving in a car and looking down at your feet. That car's moving. Sooner or later it's going to run into something. You just don't know what or how soon, but you're freaking yourself out. As soon as your eyes lift up and you look out through the windshield, it's like, oh, I know how to steer this car. I've got a brake pedal. I can do things here. Well, to get someone to quit looking at their feet and looking at where they're going, all of a sudden, everything calms down. So in business, what is it that's causing us to be myopic, that's stoking the fire of the fear? And what could we focus on? Because as soon as we're moving forward more comfortably, I'm back in control. We're all control mongers, control freaks. It's just how the human species is wired. So are we using the right tools for the right reasons in the right ways?
Exactly. Speaking of that, just the analogy of, like you said, looking ahead and looking forward for your own self, what does that look like? Like, what's your next 12 months with your business? Where are you projecting and where do you want to go with it?
Well, what I'm seeing is a huge marketplace opportunity because of what they're labeling the Great Resignation, which I think was just a huge aha moment, that I'm tired of being treated the way I've been treated just so that I can pay bills and take care of myself or my family. People are saying, well, wait a minute, I could do something different. Because companies who were, big box companies, if you work for us, you're inside of our big box. They were forced to let people work from home, and they thought, oh, this is going to be the end of our business. Well, guess what? Business carried on. In most cases, it actually got better, not worse. So now you've got people working from home. Well, how do you manage people who are working at home all over the country or all over the world when you're used to being able to, walk around and see everybody? How do we set up those constructs? How do we help people who they know what they know, but maybe they're not business people? How many people went and got their MBA thinking that now that I've got my MBA, I know everything there is to know about business, and they're still waiting tables or bartending, because there's more to business than what MBA school avails us of. You got to know how to walk the walk, talk the talk. Helping people get through that is a lot like helping people navigate unfamiliar terrain on a mountain. Let's break this down to some incremental pieces. Let's work on this for a minute and then add it to this and then add it to this. Hey, look at what you just skied down. Look at what you just did with your company, with your department, with your team.
I'm like, wow, it's true. I just did that. Right. And then, I just like the momentum building of that, where I think once we all start realizing the power that we actually have and looking at fear and looking at the uncertainty, and once we understand it more, then we're able to really keep building that momentum, I would say, which is very powerful. And so with that, when people maybe want to learn more from you or they want to get in contact, where can they find you?
It's real easy, barrymoniak.com. And that's got all my contact information and my social media channels. And that's the easiest way to find me.
Okay, perfect. I do have just one or two final questions, kind of to leave everyone off with something to think about. Is there something within your own journey that you wish that you knew sooner?
Yeah, that fear is not something to be afraid of. That it's a useful force if I'm willing to learn what it is and how it operates. Because there's a lot of people. I was born highly empathic, but nobody bothered to tell me what that meant. So I just thought I was a walking Looney Tune because I had thoughts and feelings and sensations that made no sense to me until I finally figured out I was picking up on other people's stuff. Okay, great. Now what am I supposed to do with that? Right? Well, what I've come to is more people are more sensitive than most of us would imagine. But just like fear, being sensitive, being intuitive, we hide that from one another because it's going to weird people out. Giving people permission to tap into that, get comfortable with it, and realize that sensitive people, sensitive kids We've got kids coming in with a little bit more wattage online than what maybe we came in with. And what are we doing? We're throwing drugs at them to try to bring them back into some semblance of normalcy. They're not abnormal. They're just picking up on more than the average puppy. Mm-hmm. We should be helping them understand that. But again, school, religion, business, we don't talk about the things that are most important to us as human beings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fully agree with that. And yeah, just accepting and trying to understand it more instead of trying to repress it and hide it or put it behind our wall that we're wearing. It's like, if we can just be more open and vulnerable with sharing it, I think we'd all really be better off in the end. So yeah, that's a great message for sure.
Now, one thing I will suggest is most everybody is waiting for the other person to go first. It goes back to that asking someone to dance kind of analogy. Yeah. You know, you're in a waiting room for the doctor or the dentist, right? And you can feel it. It's palpable. People want to talk and they don't. They hide behind their magazine that they could care less about. Mm-hmm. You get into an elevator with people, right? You're literally squished up next to people and nobody wants to talk, right? So it used to make me so uncomfortable to be in those situations that I couldn't help myself. Something would blurt out. Mm-hmm. It was kind of like just pointing at the elephant in the room. Can you believe we're in this situation and neither one of us can, muster the courage to just say hello to the other person? Oh, I'm so glad you said that. Yes. And then we have our little chat. Hey, it was great talking to you. And we go on about our way. And I'm like, wait a minute. There's something about initiating that level of conversation that not only made me feel comfortable, it made them feel comfortable. People in leadership positions, and again, leadership could be ownership, management, sales, customer service. If we're willing to open up the dialogue with other people, internally and externally, watch how 99 times out of 100, people are going to go, thank you so much for opening up the conversation.
Mm-hmm. The initiation. And I mean, I'm a skier, so I just thought of like when you're on a ski lift and you're obviously all bundled up and stuff, but no one wants to say something if there's other people. But if someone just like says something, then the conversation flows. You talk about where you live and just this normal conversation. And maybe it's really good. Like maybe you actually become friends with them and meet up later for a drink or dinner. And it all just happens because someone initiated that. So
that's I think all it took. Yep. Yeah. I can't tell you, Shelby, how many times that's happened to me that on a chairlift. Hey, where are you from? What brings you out here? You local? Did you travel in? Just simple, easy questions. And we end up having lunch or a beer. Like you said, maybe, getting together for, I'm here with a group of people. Where are you going later? We don't know. We're not from here. Hey, let me recommend something, Well, are you going to come meet with us? Sure, I'd love to. And all of a sudden I've got friends and contacts. It's the same thing in business networking. Instead of, handing out cards and collecting cards, go have some conversations, go hug and kiss some people. Hey, who are you? What brings you here? What are you all about?
Yeah, exactly. And you never know what's going to come from that or what door is going to open from building those relationships, which is kind of the beauty of life and business. And it just takes not being afraid
and even if nothing came of it, I had a 2-3 minute conversation with you that made me feel good. It was pleasant and it was way better than that tension of, I want to say something, but I'm not sure if I should.
Yeah, exactly. Or even in the contrary, if you said something or you smiled or said hello and they said nothing, it's like, well, I did my part, I guess. Like I can't say I didn't try. And then
exactly. But when you look at it in retrospect, the amount of times that happens,
it's true.
I'm like, okay, I'm not going to freak about those one-offs. Because most of the time it turns into a very pleasant conversation.
Yeah. Well, all the times it usually happens is in our head. We're like, oh, it happens all the time. And we always seem to fixate on that stuff, which I guess is what you're here for, to help us just uncover why we feel that way or why the fear is there and how we can overcome it. So I want to say thank you on behalf of myself and everyone listening, for sure, that this has been great conversation. And just thank you so much for sharing some of your knowledge with us. and definitely a lot of things to think about, I think, for ourselves. And if someone's listening and they feel that they resonate with what Barry's saying, reach out and hopefully you can learn more and live fearlessly.
Yes. Yeah. Fearless is not the absence of fear. It's having a functional relationship with fear.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. This has been awesome.
Mm-hmm.